Well, hello everybody, so welcome to another Simplicity of Logic. Today we'll be talking about when good advice is good advice. Now, we'll go through the same process. We'll talk about what the topic's about today, then the counter arguments to what I'm standing up for, my point of view, and then a conclusion. So let's get into it. Now, today's topic is basically about the fact that advice, regardless of its source, if it's good advice, meaning it makes sense regardless of where it comes from, even if it comes from a so-called hypocritical source, should we say. And this came about because recently people like Jack Ma and all that have come out and given a lot of good advice. Can't deny, but it's very generic, and literally it seems like just because he's a billionaire the advice is good, but when someone else gives it, it's seen as wrong even though it's the exact same advice. At the same time, also I have personal experiences where when a person, you know, is okay with me, they agree with my point of view, but the minute something happens they disagree, they call me, they say that the advice they've given before is wrong. So that's where this whole thought process came about. So that's what today's topic about. So let's first go into the counter arguments for today's topic. Now the counter argument for the first one would be that only a person of quality is to be trusted with advice. And when I say that, of course it stands for someone who has already achieved that thing that that person is asking or giving advice about, such as in business or like with Jack Ma, billionaire and all, and such. Now the reason why, of course, is pretty simple, because personal experience. A person who has gone through the trials and tribulations and succeeded is more likely to give you the kind of advice that will help you get there faster. Another point is also that he's less likely to give you advice that is wrong, because like I said, he's gone through the what's good and what's bad, and he can tell you, like, you know, example with the bodybuilding. If someone knows bodybuilding, he can tell you which supplements you really need and which supplements you won't need, constantly, because the advice given is real. And that's the reasons for basically the counter argument, that he's a more trustworthy source, and that's why you take that source. A person of quality is the only person you should get advice from, because it's more trustworthy in a way. Now let's go into the pro arguments that for what I'm standing up for, which is good advice is good advice regardless of where it comes from. The first thing I would say to the counter argument is that I have to give it to the point that it's true that if a person of quality, why would you not listen to them, since they've gone through that trials and tribulations? But I would state that that case is only probably really true when you know nothing about the topic. Example, for me, I know nothing about computers and all of that. So therefore, someone who knew about computers can tell me, like, yeah, you don't need this kind of Pentium, you don't need that kind of processing power, because I literally do not know anything. I wouldn't know good advice from bad advice, basically. So that's the thing I can give the counter argument. Whereas I feel that there's a lot of advice given that people do know about, like in your daily lives. The best example of this I came up with was this simple idea. You're about to cross a road, and you see right beside you is, let's say it's in the newspapers and the news, this child rapist, alright? And not only that, he's a serial child rapist, and he's not repentant about what he has done to kids and all, but he got away on some, you know, technicality in the law. So he's standing right beside you, and there's a lot of cars speeding about, and it's a red light, alright? And you look at it and you're all disgusted, and you want to cross the road during the red light, so it's an illegal crossing. Now he stops you and he says, you shouldn't cross the road, there's cars racing about. And you look at him and you go, who are you to tell me how to live my life? You cross the road and you get hit by a car. Now the point of that is that he is, in most cases I will argue that this guy is scum of the earth, and you're right, you're probably a better person than him, but the advice he gave was good advice regardless of whatever he is. That advice in itself, the logic of it was good. And that is the case I'm standing up for, that in many times the case, many people, especially in the internet age, know about topics, especially about daily life, and that you should look at advice for advice sake, meaning that if the advice given makes sense, you should accept it, you know, not just because of its source. Like the idea of just because a person is rich and a billionaire or whatever, is he to be trusted? For sure, obviously not. With all the rich people who have done bad things, and just because if the person poor, if a person is not very influential, that mean that his advice is wrong? No. To give example, Jack Ma, he recently just released Alibaba on New York Stock Exchange, the 70 richest man in the world currently, I think. And at one point, you know, everybody started sharing his stuff, okay, all his advice and all that. Jack Ma, this is to say how to succeed in business, and everybody just kept sharing it. Nothing against people who want to share it, but truthfully it was the most generic advice ever. Just like when Steve Jobs also came out, every other article was Steve Jobs saying something about how to become a billionaire. And just to give you an idea how easy it is to write these articles, off the top of my head, you know, give you 5 points, like you know, you should never give up, you should always stand up when even after failure, you should, you know, move forward all the time, stick with friends that you have, and you know, always go with your opportunities. You see what I mean? Literally off the top of my head, I can come up with an article like that. At one point I did look at this top 25 facts about Jack Ma, you know, and it said at one point he was even turned down for a job at KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. You know, now take this example, that what if he did not succeed at Alibaba, and he literally is just an unemployed person who didn't get hired by KFC. Now he's the exact same person, and let's say he came up with the exact same advice and the article came out, you know, but he's not a billionaire. He's an unemployed unemployed person who did not get a job at KFC. Now you wouldn't listen to him, even though he's the exact same person, and just a technicality of life made it that he didn't become the Alibaba billionaire, but it's the same person, same advice. See, good advice is good advice regardless of its source. In conclusion, a person should look at good advice is good advice from any source, and to basically look at the argument or debate point from a standpoint of logic, meaning that, you know, if it makes sense, it makes sense, and not to try to just judge people, and even when they're telling you something that can help you, when you choose not to accept it. And the other point of it is actually this whole positive world where we're growing up in, where everybody just keeps sharing all these positive, you know, pictures and these positive stories, you know, just to stroke their ego. Because like with the Jack Ma thing, people keep sharing about how this is the way to succeed, you know, and they'll caption it like that, and it just strokes their ego, but they never do anything to help them get better, because all they're doing is like, look, I shared that because I believe in, you know, striving towards success. Yet, you know, how much are they striving towards their success is arguable, to say the least. You know, that you do something like give you example, the ASL challenge, ice bucket thing. So for sure, I assure you, there are a lot of people who poured the ice over their head. They gave not a cent to any charity. So should they feel good about themselves? I argue not, because I think anyone who gives money but doesn't pour ice over their head is a better person than any of those people, and I say that quite openly. So thank you very much. Till next word.